and hopefully my hopefully my reception and stuff holds up. I kind of forgot that I had a little bit of a mess down here, but I got to set this up and then I'm going to get started. So, a couple of things that I thought I'd be talking about tonight because I'm brainstorming and whatnot based on different comments and different things that I had was one of my Patreon supporters said that he has been focusing more on meditation rather than working with spirits and such. And so I thought I'd talk about meditation for a little bit. I'm just going to start ranting because I don't have anybody on right now. Maybe Sunday nights ain't such a good idea for a live stream, but we're just going to go with it anyway. All right, so seeing as I set myself up here, all right, hello, got somebody in. How's it going? So I was just saying that, I would basically you'd be talking about like meditation and spirits and the gatewalking and other things like that. So what I thought I'd start off with is some meditation stuff, you know. So meditation, there's several different forms of it, and is it important for magical practice? Yeah, definitely is. You know, like I'm just going to go off of a couple of things. So, I was working on the class for the NERGAC, and a lot of some of my classes I've done the meditation lesson and I just kind of poured them over in between because I felt that the videos were very, very good. But I decided to make a fresh one because of video quality and such things like that. And one of the biggest misnomers that people have about meditation is basically that they think that their mind has to go blank when they meditate, you know, and that is the biggest misnomer about meditation, that your mind has to go blank and you can't think of anything. There's breathing meditation where you're focusing on your breathing, in, out, in, out, in, out, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, things like that. And then there's, focused meditation where you can focus on a particular thing. It could be an object, it could be a visualization, it could be a thought, it could be a statement of intent. And for magic, we really want to think about that statement of intent in our spell work, right? That's why I always say that your statement of intent should be something that's short, simple, and you can repeat it over and over and over again, like a mantra, where the more that you say it, the more that you're programming it in your subconscious mind rather than your conscious mind. The subconscious and conscious mind, you can equate both of those to like, well, the conscious mind is like a program that you're building for coding, and the subconscious mind is the code within that. Funny, interesting things about crystal balls I could talk about too, but that's more Dark Tower related and whatnot. So, interesting idea with the crystal balls, Chad. Just saying. So, you know, when you're repeating a mantra over and over and over and over, you're taking something you're doing in your conscious and you're putting it into your subconscious mind. Whether it's I'm going to get that job, I'm going to be better at this person is out of my life, you are programming it into your subconscious, which will then dictate your actions out in the real world. If you're trying to get rid of somebody at work, or you're trying to eliminate them, then not only consciously will you act that way in how you interact with that person or maybe avoid that person, but also your own energy is going to be pushing that person away, pushing that person out, So when you're programming your subconscious mind with your statement of intent, one of the other things that I thought of was that statement of intent that you do for your spell work. You can then take that and actually put it on little pieces of paper, put it in your bathroom, put it on your refrigerator, put it in places that you frequent. And then as you pass by, you're going to read that and your subconscious is going to be reminded, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be working on this thing. This is more like the psychological aspect of meditation, but I think that you can't work magic effectively without understanding at least some psychology, because we are working with the mind. All the tools and different things on the outside are more or less just substitutes and different things that act as crutches for your own magical workings. Because, you can cast a circle with a wand, you can do it with your hand, you can do it with your mind. You know, like wards and different things like that, for example. You can practice going around your house and pushing energetic words and drawing sigils all over the place. And if you do that every single day, again and again and again and again, then what you can eventually do is you've already tied that entire practice in there, and you can just snap your fingers, and that entire energetic thing that you've built in, that you've done over and over and over and over, can happen instantly. Let me know if any of this is making sense, by the way. Also, I don't know if it would be a good idea, Chad, to put an affirmation in your shoe. I mean, you could do that with like a sigil or something, so technically speaking, I think that would work. But for all the things that I was talking about with, something that you're going to pass by and read and therefore continually program in your subconscious, unless you look at it every single time you put your shoe on, it's not exactly the thing that I was talking about. But yeah. Oh, interesting that they do that kind of thing in hoodoo. I mean, that's, that would go along with sigils and stuff. Like when I had a sigil for protection in my wallet every day when I was working at a school with a kid that was more or less an angry kid, I had a sigil of protection in my shirt pocket, and it would always just be folded up. So every day when I would switch to the next shirt that I was wearing, when I would get home and set all my stuff up, just switch it right there in the pocket, so trying to think of where else I wanted to go with meditation. One of the interesting things that I want to do more of with meditation is the contemplative meditation, where you're thinking about something and just seeing where your mind goes. Because, if I'm up and around and I'm driving the car, or I'm cleaning the house, or I'm even at work or whatever, and I'm trying to think about something, there's all these outside distractions when I'm working. What do I have to do next? What do I have to do next? What do I have to do next? But if you're sitting there in meditation and you're completely dead quiet, then what happens is there are no other outside distractions. Of course, your mind is going to get distracted with, what did I eat for lunch? What do I want to eat for lunch tomorrow? This stressful thing that I have going on. What's next on my to-do list? Up, work, home, TV, bed stuff. But when you're in meditation, you bring your thoughts back to that central point of whatever you're contemplating, whatever you're thinking out. So, if I'm working on writing a book, I can sit there in meditation and really just focus and think on that one particular subject. And by doing that, what I'm doing is I can really get somewhere, because I'm not going to have those outside distractions, So that's why it's also even handy to have, like, sometimes you can have, I wouldn't say you got to have a method of recording things like that, because let's say I'm meditating and I'm really thinking about something, like the next book I want to write, or the next spell I want to do, or parceling out something that's in my mind that, like, I'm dealing with a lot of, certain things are coming up for me from way back when that I'm trying to revisit and uncover more of, if that makes any sense. And so if I'm sitting in meditation trying to figure it out, provided I'm in a good space where I can talk out loud and, I'm not going to be distracted and it's more of a private thing, then what I can do is I can have my phone set on a recorder. And as I'm thinking about these things while I'm sitting there in, crisscross applesauce, closed eyes meditation, anytime a thought comes up that's important, I can say it out loud, and then it gets recorded. So that way I can listen back to it and not lose my train of thought and not lose my deep focus on what I'm trying to do. So if you're thinking about doing a ritual, or you're trying to parcel something out, or you're trying to brainstorm for something, then doing that in meditation and just talking out loud and recording it that way, and then you can listen back to it when you're back in the real world, maybe when you're cleaning or driving your car or whatever, that can kind of, help you along your brainstorming and your thoughts. So Wonder what you guys think about that one, because that was something that just came up for me earlier, and I thought I'd kind of share it. Um, Now, at the beginning of the live stream, I mentioned that I had one of my Patreon supporters said that he's working more on meditation than working with spirits. And I think that's a rather good thing, because the more that you build your skills with meditation, whether it's just calming your mind so you can actually hear spirits, or focusing your own willpower and focusing your attention on being able to, you know, have a less distracted mind, then the more powerful your magic is going to be, because you're going to be able to focus on whatever the heck it is you're doing when you are in your ritual space. So when you've got to be 100% focused on that ritual, rather than, oh man, what am I going to do for lunch tomorrow, or is this magic going to fail, or am I going to do this right, something like that. Those kinds of things can really screw you up, you know. um, Chad, so guided meditations are a great way to start, um, because they can really, as long as they're open-ended, and I mean, there's a lot of different criteria for guided meditations, at least for me, where if somebody's going to guide me on a journey somewhere, their instructions need to be spaced out. You know, give like 30 seconds or so in between each instruction, because when you're hearing things, you're in your logical mind. When and what we're trying to do in meditation is go deeper, but every time we hear something, that's bringing us back into our logical mind. So those little knocks on the door from our logical mind need to be small enough so that you can stay in that meditative state. It's almost like, and tell me if this has happened to you, but you're dreaming, and maybe you have a radio or a TV on when you're asleep, right? And sometimes the noise from the TV or the radio can seep into your dreams. I don't know if you've ever had that, but for me, those different times when that has happened, it's actually brought me out of the dream, and I wake up. Sure, there's a couple of noises and stuff as my brain is starting to like kick itself back on into the awakened state, but then it brings me out of my dream. But in this case, with meditation, we want to stay inside the dream. We want to stay under, you know? So as long as you have something that is going to be, you know, something that's going to be structured enough, intentional and structured, like you said, you know, with enough space for your mind to be free to think and to just let it flow and experience what you're there to experience, then yeah, that is a good thing, you know? Wake up with a song in your head in the morning, is that because of the radio, or is that because of just an earworm, as they call it? And by the way, anybody that's here, if you have any questions, comments, complaints, concerns, issues, just let me know. One of the things I have been working on with a couple of my videos is messing around with the microphone. Sometimes the earbud actually does work with the as a microphone, and apparently sometimes it doesn't. So in a couple of my videos, you'll actually hear me like be a little bit more distant, and that's something that I am working on fixing, because I'm trying to make it better. You know, I'm trying to fix things, and I'm trying to make it a little bit easier to record for me, and having a good quality of audio, you know? Hmm. That does sound interesting, lady. That does sound interesting. Very, very cool. Oh, so Chad, if you want to learn some Buddhist chants and things like that, I definitely would recommend that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different Buddhist books that I actually have quite a few of, that might be of interest to you if you want to like dive into Buddhist meditation and stuff like that. I could kind of, if I can not trip on a couple of things over here. I have a light problem up here in the basement. Let me see if I can turn my camera around. So if you look, I got a couple of Tibetan books on top of my refrigerator right here. The Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, What Makes You a Buddhist, Fundamentals of Tibetan Buddhism, The Foundation of Buddhist Practice, Words of My Perfect Teacher is a huge book. Dalai Lama, The Essence of Songpa's Teachings, In the Footsteps of Bodhisattvas. The Tibetan Book of the Dead wouldn't exactly have that much of a mantra kind of thing, but that does talk about the different bardos, and it's really, really interesting in that way. So those are a good couple of books that you can start with, particularly Words of My Perfect Teacher and The Foundation of Buddhist Practice. Those are rather interesting ones to start with. So, other than magic and whatnot, Tibetan Buddhism has always been wicked, wicked interesting to me. It's one of the things that I really kind of gravitate towards, other than magical practice and whatnot. Speaking of which, I don't know if you guys have ever seen one of these. Sorry about the light being so bright up there. But this is it's got two names as far as I can tell. I don't know which one technically it is. This is either a Kartika or a Khatvanga. It is credited to the patron Buddha of Tibet, Padmasambhava, saying that he invented it. The moon knife is more or less related to the Dakini, the female consorts to the Bodhisattvas, right? But this has a lot of different symbols on it. It's got 3 heads on there, each of them representing something I can't remember off the top of my head right now. It's got a Vajra or a Dorje right there. And this spike on the bottom, which has another Dorje on it, this was actually used to kind of bind spirits in their place, ground them, bind them so they're rendered powerless. In my magical workings that I do, like magic for hire stuff, I use this as like a cord cutter. And then I've also used it for grounding purposes if I'm doing some different banishments and whatnot. This took a long time to track down and really kind of understand it and whatnot. There are bigger ones, crazier ones, and there's different ones. There's ones that don't have the moon knife on it, and there's one that's like, man, the thing must be like 4 feet long or something. I'm probably going to end up getting one of those really, really soon. I have a little statue of Padmasambhava that has the particular one that I want, but it's like really, really tiny. That thing is like a hair width with how big it is. So definitely a very, very, very cool tool. Trying to think anything else on the altar, but yeah, this is the main altar that I work at. You can see the Mandal of Calling underneath it. I got Ishtar right there. Got a good number of different things on here. This was a gift from the Black Tower right here. This Tibetan prayer wheel. This is a huge lapis. If you haven't seen the video where I talk about it, I do have a video on lapis, but this was actually a gift when I taught at a festival several years ago. An old lady who was like 80 years old and went skydiving, she gave me that for free. Kind of awesome. So, yeah, got a good number of tools here. Pakucho, it's a llama pelt, has a couple of sacred items in it. This is a kipu right here. This has 12 stones from 12 different places that I've built relationships with the spirits of. This is from the Karo tradition of the Andes. I have a burning bowl right here that I'm actually going to convert to an Agama Saratu. This is my old school Agama Saratu right here. And then, of course, I have Lamaju Dingir right here. And then I have 2 bells. This is from the Karo tradition also. You have a llama, and then the head of Inti Taita, or Taita Inti. And then, of course, I got Thor's hammer as a paperweight, and another little Thor's hammer right here. But yeah, those are a couple of the things I've been working with. Yeah, I had to move this meditation chair thing right off of the couch because we're kind of rearranging things upstairs a little bit. And then you can see my wicked, fabulous guitar over here. Kind of gorgeous. Anyway, little tour of my abode, I guess you could call it. But one of the interesting things that I gotta ask my lady if she's got the if she can find the picture again, but it was an interesting depiction of the movement of Venus over the course of a year, I guess. And it kind of starts up at the top and then it moves down and then it moves back up. And I mentioned on the title of the live stream that I wanted to talk about gatewalking a little bit. And it's kind of interesting if you think about it, with the movement of Venus going downwards and then up. What does Ishtar do in the descent of Ishtar in the Sumerian myths and the Simon Necronomicon, right? She descends and then she ascends back through the gates. So you always got to think about how the natural world echoes these myths and legends, and what these myths and legends can teach us, both from like a symbolic standpoint and energetic standpoint, and the standpoint of explaining something that happens in the real world. So that whole descent of Ishtar could have been inspired by the movement of the planet itself, right? Because everything that's in the spirit world has a reflection in the material world. That's why you have Demeter and Persephone, with the whole explanation of the seasons, and even in Irish folklore, they kind of have the same kind of thing with how they explain that there are two goddesses that fight each other, and that's one of them is more associated with like summer, and one of them is more associated with winter, and that explains how we get summer and winter, because like so many months out of the year one wins, and then so many months out of the year the other one wins. So when you're talking about like gods and stuff, that's why a lot of them are associated with like wind, rain, storms, yada yada yada, or even pestilence, death, and what have you, because they're used as a means of explaining the natural world in a supernatural way. I love these live streams because I always feel like I'm bouncing all over the place, so I think it's more of a fun thing to do with that way. King of the Oak and King of the Holly. All right, that's something I'm not entirely familiar with. I'm kind of bouncing around more with different mythologies other than the Mesopotamian one. I'm actually exploring more European mythology at this point, particularly like Celtic and Irish. My lady kind of got me into it. She's digging around on it, and of course, because this is what we talk about all day, then I'm going to be exploring those kinds of things more. And one of the interesting things about that actually relates with the Kara tradition that I also follow, which I can teach lessons on, by the way, if anybody wants, is working with particular spirits that are around us, because they believe in things like fairies and nymphs, all those like land spirits, fairies, nymphs, gnomes, yada yada, what have you. Even in the way that certain landmarks and structures are supposed to be associated with different gods and goddesses. Dark and light halves of the year, very Celtic. Nice. Yep. Glad you understand what I'm talking about, because I'm still kind of wrapping my head around it, honestly. But it's one of the things that we're actually going to be doing for the new year is working more with the spirits that are around us, because working with the the Simon Necronomicon or a couple of other traditions that they're more based with like gods and goddesses that seem to be like farther out there. The like the Dingir, for example, they're associated with planets, right? They're very, very far away. You could argue like Enlil, which is a storm god, or Enki, the god of water, and then you have Anu, the god of the sky. Well, the god of the sky is pretty far out there, but you can interact with like Enlil when it's raining, or Enki around bodies of water. But those are like bigger spirits. What about the spirits in the woods or in the grasses, or it's spirits of the trees, spirits of the rocks, kind of animism stuff? We're going to be kind of digging way more into that this year. It seems like every year we have a little bit of more of an interesting magical focus, so we can not just necessarily stick with one thing all the time, but to really kind of see what's out there. Because I think that one of the biggest mysteries that we have is what our world is really about. The abilities that we have to work magic, to create things, to make things happen, stuff like that, and the entities that we can work with, and how can we work with them? You know, like the Nurgak spirits. It's I had a comment on the Magickology Facebook page where the guy asked Peter Lavenda if Simon did the Nurgak book, and according to Lavenda, that's a no, even though it's credited to Simon. So, are the Nurgak workable? I would argue yes, because of the fact that I have worked with the Nurgak, and even if it's kind of like an egregore or something that was created by man or whatever, does have a different energy to it than the 15 Names of Marduk for sure. But I think that they definitely still are. And I mean, arguably, any spirits or any sigils or what have you. I mean, look at like the stuff from Lovecraft. That's like fiction, right? Simon Necronomicon ain't fiction. I could rattle on about that, but I don't really want to do that. You know what I mean? The fact is that working with like any kind of spirit that you want to work with is arguably possible, even if it just echoes something from your subconscious mind. That's one thing. But if you go with the spirit model, then there's got to be more than just us and animals and whatnot. If they exist on a different like plane of existence or what have you, like the gods or even like the 50 Names of Marduk, then they're still accessible. But I would think that if there's like animals, plants, trees, birds, what have you, out there in the physical world, then it would make sense that there are other kinds of beings out there, just in a more spiritual manner, you know. So like you could even venture as far, and call me crazy if you want, but I'm still kind of like digging into this kind of stuff. You could argue about things like gnomes, or gnomes, nymphs, nagas, even questionable with the Terdadonan. I think that's how you pronounce it in Gaelic. I'm really bad with the Gaelic, so don't crucify me. You know what I mean? Then um, the Terdadonan, or even dragons. I mean, there's like books on working with dragons. Could those just be egregores and whatnot that you create, or could you be tapping into an energy that then manifests itself and communicates with you using that particularly prescribed vision of what you're like trying to call on? I would argue, yeah, because there's a couple of different books on dragon magic, and I've always been wondering about that. So that's actually something else that I'm probably going to be getting into. I know that my dragon tarot deck that I've had since I was 18, that's or maybe 16, 17, you know, um, those those have always been spot on, you know. Um, so could it just be that it's a really great tarot deck, or could it be could it be the user? I don't mean to pat myself on my back, because I don't think I'm like the best tarot reader out there. I still have to look at the book all the time, probably because of like my problems with memorization and things like that. But I think dragon magic is also something I'm going to be getting into. And there was a really interesting YouTube channel. I can't remember the name of it, but they did have some really good things about it, you know? And okay, so a couple of comments I did want to read here. If you get results, then it's not fiction. I completely agree, because like everyone says the Simon Necronomicon is fiction. Yeah, tell that to me with my gatewalking experiences. Tell that to the guy that's taking my gatewalking apprenticeship right now that it's that it's fiction, cuz it ain't. Tell that to the Black Tower. Tell that to Karos. You know, um so all right, I'm just going to keep going here cuz I could just rant. Um so, Chad, if you really want to try dragon magic, maybe I could make a couple of videos on that. I wonder how that would be received. But of course, I'd have to, do a lot of background research, and I do want to get this class done on the Nergak. But that's like I'm working on it slowly every week. I'm making like 1 or 2 lessons for that. Got to find the motivation. Got to find the time. Yada yada yada. Also, gnomes are nothing to joke about. Do you guys want to hear a story? Story time. Okay, so my girlfriend, she was at this school where she was doing this a lot of stuff with plants and connecting with plant spirits and things like that. And one of the things that they were tasked with doing was was doing like a day for journeying out basically in the wilderness, because this lady lived up on a mountain in Vermont. It's like 3 hours and 45 minutes away from me. Long drive, by the way, because I drove her up there on a Friday and then I drive back home. Or I did that on Thursday night, and then I would drive up on a Sunday to go pick her up. So she one of the days they were told to go out there and pick the spot where they were going to go sit and journey. And she never does anything halfway. She always does something over the top, right? That's just who she is. So she ventures out there and she's trying to find her spot, but she wants to go way deep, way far in there. And she wants to be as far away from people and find like the perfect spot. Everything's got to be perfect. She gets freaking lost. Like lost to the point where she's wandering around for hours, and she heard a couple of things where and her teacher, one of her teachers who is like a Native American, told her that a gnome screwed with her. I can't exactly remember the details of why, but I think that there was one thing that she pointed out to him, or that she told him about, where he basically said it was a gnome home, and the gnome didn't like her being there, and so he like manipulated stuff to make her lose track of where she was. And I mean, she went so deep in these woods, and like I'll get to the point where I swear to God, it's almost like out of a movie, where she was finding her way back, or trying to, and she ended up walking through razor grass. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced it. I haven't. She told me about it. It was horrifying. So basically, it's wicked, wicked sharp grass, and she had all these cuts up and down her leg. She was wading through water with razor grass, and she was like getting cut up and stuff. She eventually found her way back to the road, and she's covered in dirt, covered in mud, all this stuff, and her legs are bleeding. And as she gets out on the road, there's a car driving by. So it's almost like this is the part that's almost out of a movie. She's waving at the car and whatever. She's covered in all this junk because she's been out there for hours. And like, imagine being the person in the car, seeing some like crazy, dirty, bleeding lady run out of the woods and waving her hands and screaming, "Stop!" And the car just keeps going. But eventually a second car actually did stop, that had like, it was parents and a little kid, and they actually like they pulled over and they helped her get down the road to get back to the house, and everybody was actually like freaking out looking for her for like 6 hours. And I mean, she made it to that road in the dark. So the next day, when they were actually supposed to like go out there and find a spot and do the journey thing, she stayed really, really close to the house. And there was a bee that wouldn't leave her alone. I mean, this thing was just pestering the hell out of her, and she was supposed to just sit there and try to focus and meditate and whatnot. And this bee was harassing the hell out of her, so she couldn't really go into like a deep state of meditation. And I guess this was like the spirits of the land kind of being frustrated with her for like her lack of doing something like offerings or something like that. But when you mentioned the fact that gnomes are no joke, that's what made me think of it. And I remember her telling me about how she heard a crazy noise, and she was like, maybe it was a moose, maybe it was Bigfoot. So we had this whole funny thing that we came up with where, like, no, it was Bigfoot, or maybe what, or she was like, was it Bigfoot? Was it a moose? Was it a bear? And then, there was the thing with the bees. So we made this joke, and I'm going to get this painted by somebody. I got to get a picture of this thing drawn or whatever. But we ended up coming up with this joke where it's Bigfoot riding a moose being chased by a bear who's holding a honeycomb, and then the bees are chasing the bear. Every time I think about that, I gotta have this panoramic picture of Bigfoot riding a moose being chased by a bear with a honeycomb in his mouth who's also being chased by bees. It cracks me up every time I think about it. When she gets home, I'm gonna have to tell her about it, but it's one of the funniest things I've ever thought of. So, I've seen one of the gods of my ancestors, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, when I'm meditating on and at the sun. He was a huge dragon. Yeah, Quetzalcoatl, any type of thing when they say a serpent, like Tiamat, or Quetzalcoatl, and they say serpent, arguably, they really mean a dragon, and that's like a parallel in between. Could it be this or could it be that? And I think that, even different depictions of dragons around, if you look more at the Eastern kind of depictions, like, one of the greatest representations, at least that I can think of, just because I'm such a nerd, The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, and Breath of the Wild, you have the several dragons in there. And that's very, like, Eastern based with, like, Japanese and Chinese dragons. And so they don't really have wings, but they do have claws, and they fly that way. I mean, I think that there's even Chinese buildings that are built with holes in them. Skyscrapers literally have holes built in them so the dragons can fly through them, right? And one of the other things that I really think is important to think about, which goes with, spiritual understanding and things like that, is that according to, like, I forgot where I read this, but you know how, like, some people can see spirits and other people can't. Some people can hear them, some people can see them, some people can get, like, emotional impressions and stuff like that. You have to be at a certain level or have a certain amount of perception in order to see spirits, such as, Terre de Dannen, fairies, dragons, what have you. Some people tap into that frequency just a little bit and they get a glimpse of stuff. Some people can do that and they can see that kind of stuff all the time, but I think that the more and more and more and more that you work with particular spirits, whether it be your Watcher, the 50 Names of Marduk, the 72 Goetia, the 72 Nurgak, dragons, Nagas, fairies, gnomes, the more that you work with them and build a relationship with them by calling out to them, talking with them, listening for their response, giving offerings, things like that, the more that you can do that, the more likely you are to tap into those frequencies. And for lack of a better term, I hate using those kinds of terms like frequencies and vibrations and energy and all that hippie stuff. God, I mean, I should start wearing some tie-dye. Anyways, when you tap into that kind of stuff, I think that you're training your mind to be able to perceive those kinds of things. Because I know that, like, there's a huge lake out back, and I know that I've experienced / felt the presence of some kind of serpentine watery energy out there, or like a presence, and my mind wants to say it's a giant serpent or a dragon and stuff. And even if you go with a lot of different myths and things like that, there are dragons that live in the air, there are dragons that live in the water, right? You look at the magician's books, they did a great job representing that, where the dragons lived in major rivers, and even there's the great water dragon from Japanese mythology. There's several different dragons from different types of mythologies, and they were actually kind of monsterized by European culture. That's why if you look in Eastern cultures, dragons are more, they can be, malefic with causing like storms and floods and earthquakes and yada yada, but a lot of them are beneficial, very, very intelligent beings. But if you look at Western stuff, go and slay a dragon, right? Uther Pendragon apparently befriended a dragon, and then I think he killed another one, something like that, if you go with the Arthurian myths. But, you slay a dragon in Western culture. You learn from a dragon and work with them in Eastern culture. So which one do you want to be a part of? I want to learn from dragons, right? So definitely kind of interesting stuff. Dragon Mystic, yeah. The channel Dragon Mystic, I think that's the guy. And I would agree that I've been meaning to look at his work more thoroughly. I just haven't had the time. That brings up another point. I do actually have it saved as a draft on the Amazon KDP website, but I do have a draft and some ideas about making a book about time magic. I did make a class on it, by the way, if you want to take it. But the book would be basically based on that class and then way more extensive. So, yeah, time magic is definitely something that has always fascinated me since I started working with magic, where, you can explore different events. Oh, and yep, 2024 is the year of the dragon in Chinese astrology. And so, funny that you're a dragon. I think I'm a rabbit. I don't look like one, but okay. Isn't there a Dragonomicon? I'm gonna have to look at that because I might have to get that book. But yeah, very interesting that we're talking about that dragons actually came up, because some of these things, when it comes to me talking about them and sharing them like on the channel and whatnot, I don't know how well they're going to be received with different people, because I mean, I know that a lot of people come to me for like the Necronomicon stuff, but there's plenty of people that think that the Necronomicon is BS, which it's not, and I will forever have my foot on the soapbox about that. But some things I think are like, are they too far out there? Ooh, time magic through the goddess Hecate. I would love to learn more about that and how that's kind of done. If you want to email me, please do. All right, now we're all talking these different deities and stuff. Hecate, definitely heard of her. Haven't worked with her in a long time. Since I was working with this Mastering Witchcraft by Paul Husson, Huson, I think. I think he mentions Hecate in there. And then I wonder who. All right, Working Weather Magic. A lot in Nivafa. I don't know what that is. Okay, so Chad, you brought up a good point. What if they say it's fake to weaken it? Okay, so if we're talking different kinds of magic, I could definitely see that it would like weaken it because you weaken the belief in it. But also when it comes to the Simon Necronomicon, there's so much blab about how it's fake. One, it weeds out people that are not going to do the work. It weeds out the people that aren't going to take it seriously, and it weeds out the people that aren't going to put the effort in. Right now, one of the other things is that I would argue, and a lot of other people that work with the Necronomicon could tell you that like that book calls to you. The spirit of the book calls to you. It draws you in, and it kind of reveals itself to you when you are ready, and then it helps reveal what's in its pages to you as you go along. So definitely, like, the people that think it's fake, they don't look into it, and that's fine because we don't need your skeptic ass working this tradition. You know what I mean? But if you want to dive into it and you're going to actually take it seriously, and stuff like that, then by all means, that's going to be beneficial. If that makes any sense. But yeah, one of the things I'm probably going to get is a Tibetan dragon statue that I saw on Etsy a while ago, and now I have the funds. Thank you for the confirmation that that is 100% fact, Karos. Definitely. Well, because I know you would agree because, well, you're, uh, I mean, you're just as much of a worker with the book as I am. So, I mean, I think that goes with like any and all traditions, except for like mainstream religions because they think, hey, if you don't believe, then you're going to go where we think all bad non-believers go. But I like to think we don't think in such rigid terms and rigid soapboxes because all magic is about personal empowerment and being able to transform the world in the way that you want to transform it and see change that you want to make happen actually happen in the world. And hey, if you don't want to make positive changes and you just want to go with the flow and you want to let the world sucker punch you and like you roll with the punches and whatever, fine, go ahead and do that. You can go ahead and do that on a bike, but if you ask me, magic gives you a motorcycle. Just don't get hit by any buses. But sometimes the universe will hit you with a bus, if you know what I mean. Or a cosmic 2x4. Things like that. Any tips to increase outcome? Going to apply for a new job. Okay. First, we're talking mundane stuff. So if we're talking about why skate if you can drive? True. So if we're talking about increasing the likelihood of an outcome, we got to talk about mundane stuff first. One, get yourself prepped. Learn all about this job that you can. Go on this place's website. Learn everything that you can about it. Learn what their core beliefs are. Learn what any talking points to show that you have done your research on like where you're going to work. Why do you want to work here? Because I like to eat and I need money. That doesn't exactly fly. You like this, and this, and this about the company, right? Maybe track down other people that have worked there and see what their interview process is like. Google what their interview process is like. There's plenty of things that spill on that. Maybe you can even ask Reddit for that kind of stuff. Okay. For increasing outcomes, what I think as far as magically, do a repetitive ritual every day until the interview. Pick a spirit that you can work with that would be good for obtaining a job. One of the ones that I can think of, if you're talking about the 50 names of Marduk, let me dig through Lamadudingia right here, and bear with me. But there's a particular spirit that works really good for job interviews and whatnot, or at least the mind. I know the picture of it. Let me switch the camera over. I know the picture of it. It's like, do I want to look at the book or do I want to look through my screen here? This guy right here, 33. My own personal notes. Help gaining employment. Number 33, Zulum. So take note of that guy right there. So I would invoke him every single day. Do the Ziki Akampa, Zianakampa, Zidingir, Kiakampa, Zidingir, Anakampa. Hear me, O thou Zulum, come to me by the powers of the word Abababal. Abbabal. Yeah. So I'd go with that guy. This is for gaining employment or anytime you're doing any business matters to protect you from, crappy people. If you have somebody that owes you money, if you're working for yourself, things like that. That guy. Well, I'll have to remember to do things on the weekends more if I can get around to it. I just had a little bit of free time because my lady's over at her parents' house. So, and I got out of work at a good time. So, invoke that particular spirit on the daily or nightly, whenever you can squeeze it in, and just do that every single night. What I want you to do is also visualize and think of anything that could happen at the interview. Visualize the positive outcome. Think about, where are you going to sit, how you're going to sit, what you're going to wear. Um, take that sigil that you made and put it, you know, when you go to the interview, take it with you. Put it in your shirt pocket. Put it in your wallet. Bring it bring it with you. Raise positive energy through your thoughts and things like that. Think of any other time that you've gotten a job. How does that make you feel? Think of any other time you've been successful. How does that make you feel? Think about that when you're sitting there and you're gazing at the sigil and you're picturing what your outcome is going to be, and think about all the past times that you've been successful and let that energy fill you up with all that positivity of, yes, I got this, until the point where you are full to bursting. Right? You want to hold on to that feeling, because the more that you repeat this and you do that over and over and over until you have that job interview, you're gonna walk in there confident as fuck. You know what I mean? So, all right. I'm dropping some swears on a live stream. I kind of hope that doesn't hurt the monetization. Oops. But I'm tired. All right. So, anyways, I'm just about 50 minutes right now, and I do got to go wrap some things up because my lady's got a big day tomorrow, and I do want to help with some other things. So, I'm going to cut this one short for tonight. But if you guys want to, email me some questions and different topics that you want to do on other live streams and things like that, because, it's great when I have ideas and things that I'm inspired to talk about. Like, this just hit me like a truck tonight. Hey, I could do a live stream and I could talk about A, B, and C. And then we ended up talking about a couple of other things. So maybe I can make some updates on like working with dragon magic and other things like that. But definitely shoot me some questions. Be like, hey, on the next live stream, could you talk about this, that, or the other thing? Because even if you're not catching it here, you could always watch the replay, right? So, yeah, no problem, guys. Thank you for showing up. But I'm going to get going because I got a bunch of chores to do. All right. Have a good night, guys. Or why am I saying it that way? Until next time, good hunting.